Bonjour à tous. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce this event on the effective participation of people in poverty in beyond growth strategies on behalf of the members of the core group of the resolution on the extreme poverty and human rights. Albania, Belgium, Chile, Morocco, Peru, Romania, the Philippines, and obviously my country, France. In 1998, the core group has created the mandate of Special Rapporteur on extreme poverty, which aims to contribute to the debate and to the realization of SDGs with a human rights-based approach, and especially obviously the SDG 1.1 on the eradication of extreme poverty for all people everywhere. This mandate is a consensual one that has been renewed during this session, with already 50 countries already co-sponsoring the resolution. And obviously, I wish and invite all of you to join this fight against extreme poverty by joining the resolution. 6 special rapporteurs have held this mandate since its creation, and I'm very pleased that Elena DIAZ has accepted to join us, and her predecessor, Olivier De Schutter, will also join us remotely because of train constraints. Their work has contributed and will contribute in the future meaningfully to strengthen the advocacy for the inclusion of this segment of the population in the design and implementation of national poverty reduction strategies, for the strengthening of social protection mechanisms, and also recently with the roadmap on the eradication of poverty beyond growth. There are many ways and strategies to address these crucial issues, and many countries have achieved remarkable progress over the past decades, including some of those represented in this room. We know the scale of the challenge. We're still far from achieving SDG 1.1. More than 600 million people still live with less than $2.15 a day. We also know that poverty is not inevitable. We know that we must act at all levels. To discuss these issues and to show us the way, I'm very pleased to welcome our distinguished panelists. Next to me, Marcella FAVRETTO, Chief of the Development, Economy, Social and Cultural Rights Divisions for the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Elena Carolina DIAZ GALAN, who's recently been appointed Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights. Nahiba Soban, Permanent Representative of Bangladesh to the United Nations in Geneva. Katarina IVANKOVIC, who will join us remotely, is Director for Social Rights and Inclusion at the European Commission and leads the new EU anti-poverty strategy. And Emmanuel Reynaud, on behalf of ATD Carmonde, merci. And finally, Olivier De Schutter, I was mentioning him, the former Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty, who will also be joining us remotely. I'll first turn to Marcella from OHCHR, who is in charge of the division that works at the global level to integrate mainstream human rights into development policies and practice, including in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Marcella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear participants, dear panelists, I have 5 minutes, and I'll stick to it. So let me...
And I'll be very rude if you go past. I'm saying that for everyone.
Let me stick to some essential points. But first, I really need to recognize the importance of this resolution. And not only this resolution, at a time of rising inequalities, stalled progress on poverty, it sends a very important signal that eradicating poverty requires a systemic shift towards more just and inclusive economic systems. And this is really a challenge that we all need to embrace, and is very well reflected in the vision of the human rights economy that the office has been promoting for a few years. And not only I want to acknowledge the resolution, I want to acknowledge France and the core group of member states behind this resolution, but also, of course, the extraordinary leadership of Special Rapporteur Olivier De Schutter in compiling the roadmap and putting forward such a powerful vision. And that, has as one of the fundamental element, the recognition that we need to move beyond growth as the primary measure of progress and focusing instead on outcomes that deliver equality, dignity, and investment in human rights for all. And really look forward to working with the Special Rapporteur, Elena DIAZ GALAN. Today's topic is participation. And really congratulations to ATD Forward for developing tools and methodologies, because it's true that participation is taken for granted. It's not a tick-the-box exercise. If you want meaningful participation, if you want to bring that lived experience, not only in the design of policy, but in the monitoring of the effectiveness of this policy, participation must be a very sort of structured and methodologically guided process. And so participation not as an add-on, but really as a fundamental element to dismantle social exclusion and ensuring that anti-poverty strategies respond to real needs and priorities. And so it's not only about the effectiveness of the anti-poverty strategy, but it's about trust and legitimacy. And I can say that the office has really embraced the importance of participation in all the work we do at the country level. Just to flag a couple of examples, we've been working in Kenya on local budgeting and ensuring participation of participatory budgeting dialogues in Garissa, Marsabit, and Wajir, reaching almost 1,000 people and enabling disadvantaged groups to help shape budgets and redistribution of resources and investment in health and public services at the decentralized level. At Eswatini, we focus, for instance, on helping the World Bank creating a civil society platform as a sounding board of policies and programs that were being implemented in the country. In Rwanda, OHCHR and ILO have supported together a policy dialogue in which informal workers shared first-hand experience of unsafe conditions and lack of protection, helping ground legal and policy reform discussions in the realities of workers most affected by exclusion. But let me say a very important point on participation. Of course, participation needs to be structured and really must be intentional, but you can't have participation if you don't have protection. You need protection. People must feel free to monitor what is working less well together with what is working well, express grievances, document, bring it to the policy making space. And we know that civic space is shrinking, and the data collected by the office, and this is my last point, is telling and worrying. For 2024 alone, one journalist, one defender was killed and disappeared every 14 hours. So participation must go with systemic reforms to ensure protection, access to information, transparency, etc. So all this to say that we really look forward to working on the outcome of the resolution together with the partners here, and work with states and civil society in making participation real and meaningful. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Marcella, and thanks for keeping with 5 minutes delay. I really want to pay tribute to the work done by the office, both visionary in terms of the definition also of the human rights economy, but also pushing for this participation that we know is key to advance this issue. Next speaker is the ambassador of Bangladesh to the United Nations, Madame Nahida Sabhan. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, distinguished moderator, excellencies, panelists, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to thank ATD Fourth World, the sponsoring permanent missions, and all partners for convening this timely discussion. I also thank the Deputy High Commissioner, Special Rapporteur, and fellow panelists for their valuable reflections. Ladies and gentlemen, poverty remains one of the greatest human rights challenge of our time. Despite remarkable global progress over recent decades, millions continue to face multidimensional poverty, compounded by, evident in today's temperature, climate change, economic shocks, conflicts, forced displacement, and growing inequalities. Over the decades, Bangladesh has demonstrated that sustained economic growth, combined with strategic investments in education, healthcare, women's empowerment, food security, and social protection, can transform the lives of millions. These experiences have reinforced our conviction that development succeeds only when people are placed at its center. At the same time, our government recognizes that poverty extends beyond the lack of income. It often reflects deeper structural barriers that prevent people from participating fully in economic, social, and public life. Addressing those barriers requires inclusive institutions, accountable governance, and policies that empower people rather than merely providing assistance. Distinguished colleagues, the theme of today's discussion highlights an important principle that Bangladesh strongly supports. People living in poverty should not simply be beneficiaries of public policies. They must be active participants in designing, implementing, and evaluating those policies. People experiencing poverty possess unique knowledge and lived experiences that can significantly improve public decision-making. Accordingly, Bangladesh is strengthening participatory governance through enhanced local government institutions, community consultations, digital governance, and greater transparency in social protection programs. Particular emphasis is being placed on ensuring that beneficiary selection and program implementation are guided by participation, fairness, and accountability. Bangladesh is also pursuing a dignity-based social protection framework aimed at ensuring that no citizen is left behind. As outlined in the government's policy agenda, social protection is being transformed from a traditional safety net into a platform for empowerment and self-reliance. The government has already undertaken initiatives such as distribution of the family card and farmers card to strengthen the livelihoods of low-income households, farmers, agriculture workers, fishers, and other vulnerable groups, while expanding their access to essential services and economic opportunity. In terms of the distribution of family card, it is also to be noted that the family card is given to the female household owners. Furthermore, Bangladesh believes that sustainable poverty eradication ultimately depends on decent work, entrepreneurship, skills development, and innovation. Our development strategy, therefore, places employment generation, youth empowerment, small and medium enterprises, and digital transformation at the heart of inclusive economic development. In this regard, I recognize that former Special Rapporteur Mr. Olivier De Schutter undertook a country visit to Bangladesh 3 years ago. I can assure you that in last 3 years, many aspects of ensuring decent work have been changed for better in Bangladesh. We have undertaken massive labor reforms and enacted new act recently reflecting those reforms. Excellencies, as discussions continue globally on development pathways beyond conventional economic indicators, Bangladesh believes that GDP alone cannot capture the full dimensions of human well-being. For developing countries such as Bangladesh, sustained economic growth remains indispensable. Therefore, our objective is not growth at the expense of human rights, but rather inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and people-centered growth that advances the realization of all human rights. Ladies and gentlemen, while national ownership is essential, national efforts alone cannot overcome the increasingly complex global challenges that perpetuate poverty. Stronger international solidarity and cooperation remain indispensable. To illustrate, due to the ongoing conflict in Middle East, our government had to spend additional $1.8 billion US dollars in just 3 months to ensure uninterrupted energy supply, valuable currency that could have been spent otherwise, like for social protection, health, and education. In this regard, Bangladesh wishes to highlight few points. First, achieving sustainable poverty eradication also requires a fairer, more inclusive, and development-oriented international financial architecture that enables developing countries to mobilize adequate resources for the realization of economic, social, and cultural rights. We also underscore the importance of effective trade facilitation measures that can enable developing countries, in particular the LDCs, to integrate into global value chains, expand market access, and generate decent employment, thereby contributing to sustainable poverty eradication. Second, greater attention must be given to the growing debt burden confronting many developing countries. Rising debt servicing obligations are reducing fiscal space precisely when greater investments are needed in education, healthcare, employment generation, and social protection. Third, the international community must fulfill its commitments on climate finance by significantly increasing predictable, accessible, and grant-based financing for adaptation, resilience building, and addressing loss and damage for vulnerable developing countries and LDCs. Finally, the international community must demonstrate renewed solidarity in addressing the impacts of armed conflicts, forced displacement, and global economic disruptions. Likewise, restoring peace, strengthening resilient global supply chains, and mitigating the economic consequences of conflicts are essential to safeguarding development gains and preventing millions from slipping back into poverty. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your very rich interventions and for the lessons learned from the Bangladesh experience, from the barriers that go beyond income to the role of women empowerment to those recommendations that you presented at the end. Very, very useful intervention. Thank you so much. I'll now turn to our new Special Rapporteur, Elena Carolina DIAZ GALAN. Elena is a professor of public international law and international relations at the Rey Juan Carlos University in Madrid. Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Deputy Permanent. And thank you also for organizing this important event together with ATD for work and also with other state of the core group, all the state of the core group, Albania, Belgium, Chile, Morocco, Peru, and Philippines, and Romania. This event regarding the effective participation of people in poverty and beyond grown strategies, I think is key. And I will try with the 4 minutes I have also to summarize some ideas, taking account the finding or some of the most important findings from my predecessor in his report, Professor Olivier De Schutter. Secondly, also taking account the input we have getting during, well, the short time I am in the mandate from the civil society, from the NGOs, which are their worries in this topic. And the third idea is also summarize the input I got yesterday in the council from the state when I present the report of my predecessor, Olivier De Schutter. Basis on these three, I will say, idea, I will present some thought that I link very well the work done by Olivier and the work I will do with the mandate which I just start. The first one is the persistence, as we all know, unfortunately, of structural inequalities. This persistence demonstrated that eradicating poverty requires rethinking not only social policies, but also the economic development model upon which they are currently based. It is established by the previous report done by Olivier. And of course, we have in the following years still thinking about this. Linked with this idea, I would like to highlight that economic growth, far from automatically guarantee poverty reduction, can reproduce, which is very dangerous, dynamic of social exclusion. And I am very worried about the social exclusion because at least for the research I have done, it is still there, we can still find it, but it is going higher in some time. So we have to take care, I think, in the future with this social exclusion and also the deepened equality we are affording right now in different countries, inside the countries as well. So as Olivier De Schutter has emphasized in his report also, we have to take in account this question for the following years. The third one is relating more with the new report we are already working on for the new mandate. It will be, as you know, cities and poverty, poverty in cities, and we think it's an important issue and it's the moment to do it. That is why I choose it. The idea is continue with a focus of human rights perspective that I think we cannot forget. But anyways, poverty in cities constitute a multidimensional reality. It was a worry from the state, as I got yesterday in the council, the multidimensional nature of the poverty, in which I do agree, that combine material deprivation with territorial exclusion, unequal access to basic services, and also a structural limitation on the effective enjoyment of fundamental rights. The following idea will be overcoming poverty, and overcoming poverty for me require a transition toward a human rights centered economy, strengthening social protection, as I said, and guarantee essential rights, main of a social nature, such as health, housing, food, and access to water as fundamental pillar of human dignity. And the last one, I will say, building sustainable cities depend on democratizing public decision-making processes and also effectively incorporating the participation of historically excluded communities, which is one of the topics of this size event, and it was also referred by the previous Special Rapporteur Olivier De Schutter, mainly people living in poverty, mainly people suffering poverty, no? Recognizing that sustainability cannot exist without social justice and inclusion. In sum, to achieve this purpose, all these purposes, we need collaboration between organs, is key, inside the state, I will say it. Also, collaboration between all the actors of the international relation, and plus, which is key, a real will of the state to adopt binding measures and effective mechanisms to protect people in poverty. Or at least, I will say it, that the state contribute to this mandate in all these possible ways. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Katarina. I just will only say that we look forward to your report and to working with you in the coming years for this very ambitious and very, very useful work that you'll be doing. We'll now turn to the European Commission. We have Katarina IVANKOVIC, who is the Director of Social Rights and Inclusion at the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. She's as well a pen holder of the new EU anti-poverty strategy. Katarina, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly, and the floor is yours. Merci.
And I hope you see me as well. Thanks a lot, Claire.
Even see you.
Yes, perfect. Thanks a lot. Thank you for such a nice announcement. Indeed, I'm extremely happy to be one of the persons who worked on the new anti-poverty package that EU has adopted. Also, many thanks to the co-sponsoring permanent representation. Many thanks to ATD team for their organization and invitation to this event. Also, lots of greetings to Olivier and Laura. So it's really a great company that I'm in today. As many of you know, via the European Commission, we have launched on the 6th of May this year the very first EU anti-poverty strategy, but not only strategy, the whole package of fighting poverty, which outlines a strong policy framework for prevention and also reduction of poverty. It sets out really ambitious goal with this end, including the eradication of poverty in the EU by 2050. And the strategy is fully underpinned by the rights-based framework. It takes the life cycle approach. It's focusing on key measures and services to support life in dignity at every stage of person's life and ensure that people are protected and empowered through critical life transitions, such as from childhood into young age or adulthood. And it also highlights the important horizontal measures that apply across the life course. And then the importance of combating discrimination and stigma, protection against rising cost of living, and also continued access to quality services. Importantly, the strategy came with a social package, which is comprised of a proposal for a council recommendation on fighting housing exclusion, as well as strengthened child guarantee, which builds upon the 2021 council recommendation. Now, let me turn immediately in the involvement of people experiencing poverty. So since the very start of the process, when we first even thought about discussing and developing the strategy, it became very clear to us that if we were to put forward a strong and relevant framework, there was no way of proceeding without the meaningful involvement of people experiencing poverty. This followed from the understanding that policy decisions affecting people experiencing poverty should not be taken without them. And as Olivier De Schutter often says, this is not only a matter of legitimacy, but it's crucial for effective policy making, as they are the best place to inform us on what works and what doesn't work as well. So throughout the preparations of the anti-poverty strategy, we had several engagements with the different groups of people experiencing poverty at all the levels, including one that saw the participation of Executive Vice President Roxana Mizzato at 2025 Porto Social Forum, and also one that she had with homeless people, experts by experience. But the one that stuck with me the most was definitely the meeting organized by ATD Fourth World, the methodology you have developed for such meetings, and you call it the merging of the knowledge, which values the most the common understanding, and is extremely valuable and has had direct repercussions in the way that the anti-poverty strategy was developed, in particular as regards the socioeconomic discrimination and a non-take-up. So our engagement does not stop now that we have the strategy and that strategy has been launched. On contrary, building on these positive experiences, the Commission will intensify its cooperation with people experiencing poverty. We will this year begin the process to put in place the dedicated forum to consult people with lived experience representing the different aspects of poverty in a structured way, regularly, on the design, but also on the implementation and monitoring of initiatives aimed at combating poverty or social exclusion, as well as in other policy areas that may affect their lives. So we are currently reflecting on how to design this structure. What is sure is that this cannot be organized like any other advisory group of the Commission. We need to cater for the need for preparation ahead of these meetings, and here civil society will play a very important role. The next step, once we establish our structure, we would also like this to be transmitted towards our member states. Maybe just an information that just a couple of days ago, one of the Baltic countries has established the PEP committee within their strategic frameworks, and the other are reflecting how to get there. We will also have many member states that will be revising their strategic frameworks on fighting poverty, and we do hope that also the EU level structured dialogue will inspire them to have a true dialogue at the local levels and the national levels. To conclude, the effective participation of people experiencing poverty is crucial if we are to make progress in the prevention and reduction of poverty, as per our commitments in the EU anti-poverty strategy. And as said, we will incorporate this in EU policy making, but equally important it is to incorporate it in national, regional and local levels, where most decisions are taken when it comes to addressing poverty. And this is one of the messages of our principles for effective anti-poverty policies, which accompany the strategy with an aim to guide national, regional and local authorities in the development of their own strategic frameworks. So many thanks, and looking forward to continue this discussion with all of you.
Thank you so much, Katarina, for your inspiring presentation, not only on the substance of the strategy, but also on the process to build it and to implement it today, and the importance of those different levels of actions. We've been talking a lot about the participation, the involvement of people experiencing poverty. I think it's important now that we give the floor to ATD Carmon, ATD Fourth World. Merci beaucoup, and thanks for being partner of this side event. Emmanuel Reynaud, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I must say, I'm so pleased to have heard what the previous speakers just said, because it's so much close to ILO, to ATD Fourth World approach, in fact, and just to tell you that really at the beginning, at the very origin of the movement in 1957, it was at the heart of the movement. In fact, this strong belief that policies combating poverty should include and should be having a full and meaningful participation of people living in poverty. And from what I heard this afternoon, I think some steps have been fulfilled already. And what it was mentioned already, the merging of knowledge. I mean, I'm going to develop a little bit on it because I think it's a key methodology that has been developed over the years by ATD Fourth World. And it's a methodology that put into action in research or in policy design this belief that people living in poverty should not be taken as victims or as beneficiaries, but as experts of poverty. They are the ones that know best what it means to live in poverty and should be involved at all stages in reflection or implementation of policies. And so the merging of knowledge considers that there are three types of knowledge with regard to poverty. There are the knowledge of academics, there is a knowledge of practitioners, and there is a knowledge of people living in poverty. And the whole methodology, I'm not going to develop it. It's easy to get some information with regard to this methodology is to put together these three types of knowledge. So it could be done in a fairly light way, but if really we are involved in research, it takes pretty much time. The first very extensive use of this methodology was done several years ago with a team of the University of Oxford, and it was done in 6 countries. 3 from the Global South and 3 from the Global North. And from the Global South, there was Bolivia, there was Tanzania, and there was Bangladesh. In the Global North, there were United Kingdom, United States, and France. The whole idea was first at the national level, then at the international level, to have some groups of researchers with academics, practitioners, and people living in poverty. This led to highlighting 9 dimensions of poverty. The idea was to understand better poverty, to fight or to combat poverty in an effective manner. One knows first to really understand poverty and not look at poverty as a monetary dimension. And there was 9 dimensions that were highlighted. I'm not going to give them all at this stage, but just to mention some examples, I mean, disempowerment, maltreatment, no recognition of contribution, and of course, various types of privation. And this led to a report. It took 3 years and a half, just to tell you that it's not something that was light. It takes time, but I think the results were really convincing. And the research was presented at the OECD, and the Secretary General at the time was impressed by the fact that it was the first time that it shows that poverty has similarities all across country, from the poor country to the rich country. And that, I think, it's one of the major results of this research. But to not stay only at this level of research, in a way theoretical, we decided to develop with the previous rapporteur, Olivier De Schutter, that obviously is not too far. We developed a tool that's called IDEEP, Inclusive Deliberative Elaboration and Evaluation of Policies, which take into account the result of the previous research, I mean the 9 dimensions of poverty, and develop a whole mechanism to ensure the full participation of people living in poverty in the design, the implementation, and the evaluation of the policies that concern them, as a matter of fact. And to be really, if we acknowledge that a lot of anti-poverty policies or strategy fail to achieve the expected result, here we have a tool that hopefully will allow to be much more effective. At this stage, it's a tool on paper. We are working to develop it and to test it, and hopefully we will be able to soon test it on the ground. But I think that it will be interesting for you to have a look at this tool, because it's really, from what was said before, it could be a way to really put into action in the reality what has been said about participation, and the recognition of participation and real participation is absolutely key to combat poverty. Thank you very much.
Very good. Congratulations.
Merci, and thank you also for coming with gifts of this tool that I'm sure will be very, very useful, and to all the countries present today. And your presentation was also a great transition towards the last speaker, Olivier De Schutter, who was planning to be with us today, but has been stuck in his train to Geneva. So, Olivier, are you with us online?
I'm here, delighted to be with you. Thank you
Fantastic.
very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for making my online participation possible. And I'm very sorry indeed that the trains between Brussels and Paris were interrupted, making it impossible for me to catch the train to Geneva. Let me first of all thank all of those who spoke. I think we already had a very interesting discussion on the central importance of the participation of people in poverty in building a more sustainable and inclusive economy. And I would like to build on what I heard by making essentially 3 points. The first one is about the intention behind the latest report I presented, which my successor, Elena DIAZ GALAN, whom I would like to pay homage to, presented yesterday at the Human Rights Council. That report essentially said we should move beyond growth as the main way to combat poverty. And we have won one battle in the UN, which is about indicators. There's now a consensus that we need to move beyond GDP as a means to measure social progress. What still needs to be done is to move beyond growth as the chief instrument to combat poverty and inequalities. And that means building an inclusive economy, one that, rather than simply compensating ex post the losers, can avoid creating social exclusion, can avoid increasing the gaps between the rich and the poor by building an economy that is inclusive by design. This is important also because growth cannot be considered independently of its impacts on the environment. Green growth today is still largely a myth. And in fact, it is people in poverty who are the most affected by climate change and other environmental crises, as very well illustrated in the case of Bangladesh, which is one of the countries at the front line of climate change. And this is why SDG number 1, the eradication of people in poverty in the world, cannot be dealt with without also looking at the other SDGs, including SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production, SDG 13 on climate action in particular. The reason why we need to build an inclusive economy is also because the quest for growth can be counterproductive, in the sense that if we are focused on increasing the GDP, we are using the wrong tool, the wrong compass to make the choices we make, and we may take policy decisions that will actually be counterproductive in the fight against poverty. For example, if we flexibilize the labor markets, if we privatize the commons, if we create a business-friendly investment climate in the name of creating growth, we create social exclusion rather than remedying it. So that is the first point I wanted to make. The second point about participation of people in poverty. Let me, of course, thank here Katarina IVANKOVIC from DG Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion for having very explicitly made this point. And of course, my friend Emmanuel Reynaud has emphasized this further. Participation is not just about consulting people in poverty to make sure the decisions taken are understood and legitimate. Participation is co-construction. It means valuing the expert knowledge of people in poverty, building on their understanding of the obstacles they face, and allowing us therefore to learn from them and to learn from the solutions they have, because they understand very well what obstacles they face in trying to escape poverty. So it does ensure better informed decisions. It is not only a means to an end, however, whether it is to build legitimacy or to improve effectiveness of decisions, it's also an end in itself, it's empowering. And France, with its Conseil national de lutte contre la pauvreté et l'exclusion sociale, chaired by my friend Nicolas Devoux, and Belgium, with its 2023 law, federal law against poverty that institutionalized participation, and Morocco are all good examples of participation in practice that I highlight in my latest report. My third and final point concerns a roadmap for eradicating poverty beyond growth. The roadmap presents governments with 80 policy measures that seek to broaden policy imagination, enrich the toolbox of instruments we use to combat poverty. And of course, not every single tool is relevant in every single context. And clearly, what is needed in the Netherlands or in Luxembourg is not what is needed in Bangladesh. Each country has its own development needs, its own priorities, and should make its choices. However, it's important to note that what is interesting in the roadmap is that the various measures are, to a certain extent, interdependent and mutually supportive. For example, there's one policy proposal in the roadmap about the circular economy, the right to repair, and the duty to recycle and reuse. Well, that can be supported by the establishment of a job guarantee, creating jobs in the circular economy to allow this to become a reality. A second example, the fiscal reforms proposed in pillar number 1 about relying on wealth and inheritance taxation and on Pigouvian taxes, taxing the ills of the economy. That set of proposals concerning fiscal reform is, of course, indispensable for providing universal basic services and social protection, to finance the services that the state provides to its population, discussed in pillar number 3. Or to take a third example, the domestic reforms discussed in pillars 1 to 4 require an enabling international framework based on debt justice, on improved access to development finance, including climate finance, and on tax cooperation, all topics discussed in pillar number 5. And I very much welcome the comments by Ambassador Nahila Sobhan that rightly emphasize those very points. And to take a fourth example, transition to an inclusive and sustainable economy requires democratic governance, long-term planning by democratic deliberation. So it's not adapting to a crisis. It's not improvising measures in response to the pressure of the environment. It's about planning a change in a way that is democratic by choosing what we want to prioritize and what we want instead to deprioritize or even phase out, such as fossil fuels extraction. And that is why pillar number 6 complements pillars 1 to 5. And I would like to close by, again, thanking you, Deputy Representative Claire Touaudet, for chairing this meeting, thanking ATD Fourth World and the co-sponsors of this event for allowing this place to be dedicated to the participation of people in poverty. And I really would like to express my hope now that the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, with its human rights economy vision, will use the roadmap as a reference in the future work of the office in order to make sure that it can continue to be kept alive and that the measures proposed there that are discussed across NGOs, unions, academic experts can continue to provide us inspiration in moving towards a more inclusive and sustainable economy. Many thanks indeed.
Merci. Merci so much, Olivier, for your very inspiring presentation. And what I take from the debate we had today is that roadmap is more alive than ever. And that's a challenge we're taking together. To conclude, well, I'll first thank all the panelists for their very interesting presentation. Clearly, we've had a discussion that showed how central the participation of those experts of poverty, who are the people living in poverty, is important at all stages of defining the solutions that have to be multidimensional and that need to help us build inclusive societies that will respond to those different dimensions. As a conclusion, allow me to recall the memory of one person who is very dear to her heart, and we are celebrating this year the 50th anniversary of the demise of René Cassin, who was the co-author of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I think one sentence that he pronounced was very important and recapitulates also the challenge we have. Every person, as a member of society, is entitled to the fulfillment of the economic, social, and cultural rights essential to his/her dignity and to the free development of his and her personality. And I think we're already here to take this challenge and go forward. Thank you so much for your participation, and see you soon. And don't forget to co-sponsor the resolution. Merci.
Thank you very much indeed.
Bye-bye. Thank you.